it's a country where, as it's all about business. People are doing business. They're
Exactly,
pushing
exactly.
to,
You're exactly
yeah,
right.
you see this country. There's nothing you can't. You want to get more of everything you want here, a lot cheaper than you can anywhere in the United States. But you can do it without being mugged, shot, fucking attacked, or you can do it very safely here. I mean, which is the remarkable thing. When people
Well,
come here from the West, they say, "Where's the lawlessness? What have I been told for so long?" I mean, it doesn't materialize. It doesn't exist. Russia's an exceptionally safe country to do business in. It's a safe country for. I mean, the first time I got here, but several years ago, I kind of looked out my window and I seen a woman walking through a park right by my apartment that I was renting at 3 a.m. with a small dog. This very glamorous looking lady. And back home in Dublin, if I saw a woman walking through a park on her own at 3 a.m., I would call the cops and say there's some lunatic walking through the park. She's going to be killed. But
yeah.
I started to realize that women here can walk on the streets without fear of being
Isn't that
harassed
nice?
or.
Yeah, I've discovered that too. Like I'm because
Yeah,
I'm moving around, and it is the one of the safest cities I've ever been in. I
it's
mean,
remarkable.
every
Yeah.
city has crime, right? But like I haven't experienced anything even that has given me pause. It's very safe to walk around. And people are very sincere and actually helpful because I'm usually lost. So and I don't know. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, but
So
people
like,
are just
yeah.
nice and kind. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I suppose that also feeds into this idea that Russians won't tell you what they think about something. It's hard to stop Russians telling you what they think once they start talking to you. And like
Right.
this default Russian psyche in my view, and what I understand of the Russians as I get to know them better. I mean, they're an enigmatic people, right? And it's such a mix of ethnicities. You got Buryatians, you got Dagestanis, Chechens,
Right.
you got people from all the different Tatarstan, you got people from southern Russia. So it's this huge post-Soviet melting pot, particularly in the big cities, Moscow, St. Petersburg. And nobody here, from a taxi driver to a producer to a senior business person, none of them have been remotely scared or worried about telling me what they think about what's happening in the world, what's happening in
Yeah.
Russia, what's happening in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Nobody.
They're not
And
afraid. They have
absolutely
free
nobody
speech.
in the media
Yeah.
where I'm working right now has said to me, you can say this, don't say that. There's no red lines, don't say this, don't say that. And that's borne out by going to the UN to give a speech invited by the Russian delegation. And nobody even asked to see my speech before I went and gave it. Nobody even asked me. If that had been the United States, I mean, also, you see Putin, he'll speak for 6 hours in front of a huge cadre of journalists, foreign, domestic,
Right.
speak for hours without notes about what's happening in his country. But of course, the
Yeah.
Western media will say that this is a controlled space. It's this authoritarian hell. And I can't seem to find it. Of course,
Yeah.
Russia is different. Russians do things differently. It's a culturally different country. So are many countries. But this narrative that we're fed in the West, you really start to wonder when you get here for a long time. You say, why are they telling us why are we so scared? Why do they want us to be so scared of Russia? So you got
Right.
to ask yourself, why should I be so scared of the Russians? Like, have the Russians invaded Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, Iraq, Operation Condor in South America? Was that the Russians? Did the Russians run the British Empire, which, basically squeezed the marrow out of the whole Southern Hemisphere for nearly 200 years? Did the Russians run the international slave trade? Was it the Russians, who
Right.
generated this whole fear mongering sort of narrative around brown people, Islam? It just wasn't Russia. So Russia doesn't have that sort of imperial baggage. The Russian Empire was huge, but it was an empire which expanded from its base in Russia, and a lot of that's related to now what a lot of the problems we have post-Soviet, the post-Soviet world. But you got to understand that this whole, fear Russia narrative it serves a purpose for this look the other way narrative. I mean, people like Boris Johnson, people like Joe Biden, who are failing their own people and have failed their own people regarding domestic policies in many ways. It's always profitable to have a war. The military industrial complex that funds, donates more money to both political parties in the United States are profligate on this fear narrative, and so the media is complicit in that. So why would you expect anything different? They don't want to come here and actually walk around and actually talk to people who are completely bemused when you talk to them about this narrative in the West, and a lot of liberal Russians are kind of going, oh gosh, we wish things were different. And I'm kind of saying to them, you know what? It doesn't matter how things are going to be. The West hates you now. And this hatred of all things Russia, culturally, economically, has kind of been in the pipeline for probably a couple of 100 years. I mean, you go back to the
if you go back, it's gone back some decades. I mean, it's a convenient enemy for the military industrial complex, right?